Welcome back. You're still watching Inside Politics. Let's take a look at another story. The battle for the position of Speaker in both the National Assembly and the Senate continue to take shape as Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance Party and Kenya Kwanza Coalition strategized on how to get numbers in both houses. President-elect Wlliam Ruto has already managed to convince 10 out of 12 independent MPs, as well as 7 others elected through the United Democratic Movement that was affiliated to Azimio la Umoja Coalition. And as our senior political affairs reporter Chris Thairu says, elected members of the National Assembly have been invited for orientation sessions on Thursday and Friday this week by acting clerk Sarah Kioko.
All eyes on President Uhuru Kenyatta as the country awaits him to gazette the date and venue of the first sitting of the 13th Parliament before the elected members are sworn in and begin their legislative agenda. According to the Constitution, Article 126, whenever a new house is elected, the president has 30 days after the elections to gazette the date and venue of the first sitting. But even as newly elected MPs continue to wait for the gazettement, backroom negotiation and strategies in both Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance Party and Kenya Kwanza Coalition are still ongoing as both team eyes the positions of Speaker and Deputy Speakers in both houses.
Our figures show that we command the National Assembly. Just like I said the last time, the Senate, our competitors are up by 1, but the National Assembly, we command.
With 159 MPs elect in Kenya Kwanza, which is less 3 MPs to get an equivalent of Azimio la Umoja One Kenya, President-elect Wlliam Ruto has already bagged 10 out of the 12 independent MPs elect. This gives Kenya Kwanza an upper hand. Ruto also received another major boost after 7 MPs elected under United Democratic Movement UDM, whose leader is outgoing Mandera Governor and Senator-elect Ali Roba, jumped ship from Azimio to Kenya Kwanza. This has now boosted the numbers of Kenya Kwanza up from 159 to 176 members. And if the remaining 4 constituencies vote in favor of Kenya Kwanza Coalition, then it means that Kenya Kwanza will have 180 legislators, which would be a walk in the park for the coalition to elect a speaker of their choice.
So we will depend on you. We want you to speak freely when we meet like this. We want you to speak freely, openly.
Kenya Kwanza are fronting Bungoma Senator-elect Moses Wetangula to be the Speaker of the National Assembly, while outgoing Kilifi Governor Amason King is being fronted to be the Speaker of the Senate. In Azimio la Umoja, Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka has been proposed to be the Speaker of the National Assembly, while the Speaker of the 10th Parliament, Kenneth Marende, has been fronted to be the Speaker of the Senate. Meanwhile, acting clerk of the National Assembly, Sarah Kioko, has invited all newly elected members for an orientation sessions on Thursday and Friday next week. During the orientation, the MPs will avail their personal details. They will also be briefed on what to expect once the president gazettes the date of the first sitting. During the first sitting, the clerks of both houses shall administer oath of office to all the members present and later allow them to elect their speakers and their deputies. Those who will have the numbers will carry the day. Chris Thairu, KTN News, Nairobi.
The more reason why you should get yourself a copy of the Sunday Standard. In there is a special pullout that explains the numbers. A big pullout looking at all the numbers and the balance of power in both the National Assembly and the Senate. All your elected members of Parliament and the Senate also laid out there. The presidential election results by county there. All the numbers that we've been discussing, plus a pictorial. Know your leaders. Men, women who rode to victory. The numbers in the governors-elect, MPs-elect, senators-elect, as well as members of the National Assembly representing women. All that in your copy of the Sunday Standard. Grab yourself a copy and get to understand these numbers better. Still in studio with Hezbon Willa, Dismas Mukua, and Wakili Kene Chasa joining us via video link from Kakamega. Gentlemen, this issue of the balance of power, especially in the Houses of Parliament, we've been discussing it for quite a while. Now it has shaped up. You can see the numbers, the way they look. The most interesting thing is that according to this, Azimio la Umoja One Kenya has 160 members of the National Assembly, vis-a-vis Kenya Kwanza's 159. But some things have changed. In the last 2 days, we've seen UDM party, which has 7 members contributing to Azimio's 160, has signed a post-election pact with Kenya Kwanza. If at all you move those 7 to the other side, that would give Kenya Kwanza 166, and that would remove 7 from Azimio and leave it with 153, at least for now. Now, what do you say about this?
When one of the biggest challenges facing President Joe Biden in the US is unable to drive his agenda because he doesn't control both the Senate as well as the Congress, but he controls the White House. Now, the dream of any president or president-elect is to have his party controlling the State House, the National Assembly, as well as the Senate. And in my view, what the president-elect is doing is a very brilliant move. It's a nice political strategy. Because during the campaign, you've come up with, you've been making promises that can only be effected partially through legislative agenda. Now, you cannot drive your legislative agenda if you do not control the 2 houses. So, and Kenya has got a freedom of movement and association. So if there are MPs within the Azimio network who want to go to Kenya Kwanza, or Kenya Kwanza who want to go to Azimio, they need to have a very quick move so that they settle down. And then now we can see whether actually President-elect Ruto has got the solid numbers in the National Assembly and Senate. Now, if he gets the solid numbers in the National Assembly, then Senator Moses Wetangula becomes the Speaker. He will assist him drive his agenda, and then he will get a Kenya Kwanza Speaker at the Senate who will drive his agenda. In my view, these numbers, they should shuffle like cards, provided everything is aligned to our national and public interest, and provided these movements are not at gunpoint. And so far, the people who have moved to Kenya Kwanza have not indicated that they've done it at gunpoint. They are saying that they want to align with the winning team. And it's not unusual for people to want to align with a winning team. In coalition politics, the moment your coalition loses power, or the moment they are unable to retain power or capture power, everybody wants to associate with the winner.
Are you forecasting the end of Azimio as a coalition?
Now, if you go to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court maintains the status quo, that a president-elect or Deputy President Wlliam Ruto was validly elected, and Ruto takes the Bible is sworn into office, that would be the beginning of the end for Azimio.
Okay. Hesbon Dismas calls it a brilliant political move by the Deputy President. Do you agree?
Well, I would say, politicians are driven by political expediency. So it's brilliant on the front of securing power, controlling, the National Assembly, and probably controlling the Senate. It's brilliant. Any politician would want to have that control. But there are a number of things that come out. One, having this kind of clout, can be assumed to be a recipe for capture of the National Assembly, which is a very dangerous thing for this country. When you have the National Assembly, which is supposed to oversight the executive, captured by the same executive. So it has some undertones of very bad optics, especially if you look at what Dismas said. Were they moving because they had a gun on their head? Were they moving because they were induced by other non-public interest incentives? It could be a bad thing, for the country. But as a political party and a political coalition, of course, you want to push your legislative agenda, and you need numbers in Parliament and Senate, which is a good thing for a ruling coalition. But as Kenyans, I think, if we go back to the electioneering period and remember what the Deputy President said, his campaign platform was pro the people, bottom up, and all that kind of pro-people kind of agenda. And even when he was declared by Chebukati, though we still don't call him the president-elect, he's an outgoing deputy president until the Supreme Court decides.
He's still
even
He's president-elect.
I know.
That position has not been vacated.
Yes, that position has not been vacated, yes. But he's still holding the brief of an outgoing deputy president until
and president-elect.
Yes.
He has 2 roles.
Please don't heckle. Yeah. Now, the point I'm trying to make is very simple. Even after he was declared the winner by Chebukati, he said that Kenyans will be free. But if you look at these steps, they don't even suggest that we are looking at a situation where Kenyans are going to be free. Because if Kenyans are going to be free, and Kenyans were going to see a government that delivers on the interest of Kenyans, then you wouldn't need to have people in your coalition. Your agenda, your agenda would actually sell itself to any member of parliament, irrespective of the coalition or the party that member of parliament belongs to. Because I'm looking at public interest, that if the Supreme Court dispenses justice, and it favors the deputy president and Kenya Kwanza, and they take the reins of power and run this country, I wouldn't expect my MP to go against anything that they push in parliament simply because my MP is in Azimio. I mean, if it is something that is going to help Kenya, that is going to help me as an individual, my MP should have the presence of mind to support that. And it doesn't have to be coerced to move from Azimio to join Kenya Kwanza to support something that is good. Now, the moment you see that people are getting into a coalition and making one coalition strong at the expense of what they subscribed to before the election, we need to be worried, because it simply means that the public interest may not necessarily be what is moving them there. We don't even know the agenda that they have. We know the promises that they gave us. We've not seen even one implemented, and people are beginning to move. What is the motive? It's something that needs to cause a worry to us. Then number two, it is one thing to say that a coalition that is out of power is at the initial steps of dying. But it is another thing to talk about a coalition that is coalesced around Raila Odinga and the ideology of Raila Odinga. Because we've seen Raila Odinga outside government for the last 10 years. CORD survived until 2017, and it morphed into NASA. NASA survived until, political leaders within NASA felt that if Raila is not going to support us, then we have to bolt out. But the core of what NASA was remained, and it pushed Kenya Kwanza to the brink. And where we are today is because they are very solid political leaders who hold their coalitions together. It's the reason why we have peace today, because these political leaders have serious followings, and they've decided we're going to have peace, but we have to pursue justice.
Okay. Wakili HS, the president-elect, the president-elect Wlliam Ruto already has firm control of the single biggest individual party within the National Assembly. UDA has 137 members, and the second comes as ODM with 80. You can see already he's managed to get even more numbers from the independents and other parties, UDM for example. Dismas calls it a brilliant political move. What do you call it?
The insatiable appetite and desire by elected independents and members of the UDM to join the would-be ruling coalition of Kenya Kwanza is a threat to democracy and an affront to the functioning of parliament. Fred, our parliament is not the praise and worship arm of the national executive. There will be no desire for a sitting president to have absolute numbers in parliament unless his intention is not for the good of the public. I am afraid that we are going back to where we were in 2013 when Mutahi Ngonyi coined the infamous phrase, tyranny of numbers. And Kenyans witnessed where the tyranny of the numbers took us in terms of legislation, progressive legislation, and the economy. It's therefore a very bad idea that a sitting president or a president-elect would want to have such controls in parliament. The role of parliament is defined by law. It is oversight, it is representation, and these are things that require independent minds of members of parliament, irrespective of the political coalition. And if government has a good agenda for the general good and public interest, I see no reason why even ODM elected MPs will not back such progressive legislative agenda. Be it as it may, it is clear as day that Wlliam Ruto will have the speaker of his choice in the National Assembly because he has numbers. Wlliam Ruto will have a speaker of his choice in the Senate because he has numbers, but it is not good practice in a democratic society. And we are moving steps back in our democracy. No right-minded democratic citizen should be celebrating that one coalition has absolute powers to do whatever they deem fit in their own political interest in aid of the two houses of parliament.
Okay, thank you, Wakili. And one of the main reasons, or one of the main users of these powers within the National Assembly or the Senate is going to be, at least in the short term, the election of the Speaker of the National Assembly, who will effectively be the third most powerful person probably in the Republic, at least in the pecking order. After the President and Deputy President, then the Speaker comes in. Now, we've seen the proposal by Kenya Kwanza, which has fronted the Senator-elect for Bungoma, Moses Wetangula, as a possible Speaker of the National Assembly. On the other hand, Azimio la Umoja, interestingly, has fronted Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. I don't know, especially on the choice of Kalonzo Musyoka, do you see it as a lack of confidence, because he had been promised the position of Chief Minister, barring the petition, because now there's a petition which could go either way. Do you see a bit of lack of confidence in that?
Fred, in the interest of clarity, number one, Wlliam Ruto is both deputy president, outgoing, and president-elect. Parts of Kenya may not like that, but that's what the constitution says. Number two, NASA disintegrated not because some candidates wanted Raila to back them, but it was a question of infidelity to the NASA agreement, especially on the issue of financing, and a disrespect from junior members of NASA to the NASA principles. Again, it's important for us not to start revising history. Now you come to the interesting bit. The elephant in the room, Kalonzo Musyoka. If you've been promised to be the chief cabinet secretary or the equivalent of a prime minister in an Azimio administration, and you are very sure that you've got a very strong petition, and you are also very sure that the Supreme Court is going to rule in your favor, and you are very sure that Mr. Raila Odinga is going to become the president of the Republic of Kenya, why would you want to run away from that role and go to the speaker's position? In my view, Kalonzo Musyoka has done his mathematics, and Kalonzo is one of those intelligent politicians in Kenya who is underrated. He has done his mathematics, and he realizes that the position he was promised under the Azimio la Umoja has disappeared into thin air. Now let me go for another stronger position, the National Assembly. Now, if you become the National Assembly, as you indicated, you'll be third in the pecking order. So that will effectively make him the most powerful politician within the Azimio, assuming he gets the position in the National Assembly. But again, probability of him getting that position is significantly reduced because of the movements you've seen from UDM. That's why parts of the Azimio are extremely bitter, because they are banking on every single vote. Now, when you have 7 votes moving out, people may say, are they going to act in our national interest? Are they going to act in our public interest? Have they done it under duress? Have they been given any incentive? And there will be rumors flying all over. But the fact remains, they've indicated their willingness to work with Kenya Kwanza. In my view, what we must then ask ourselves is that if Ruto is at State House, then he controls the National Assembly and Senate, is he always going to act in our national and public interest? And if he doesn't, how do we check him? Because people went to the elections, candidates presented themselves, and Murai in our wisdom elected a number of them. Or maybe in our wisdom again did not elect a number of them. So they've got freedom of association. What we must continuously ask ourselves is that these movements, and when they settle down, are they going to act in our public interest? Are they going to act in our national interest? And the National Assembly and the Senate under presidential system does not have a minority, it's not seen as an opposition. So the members of the National Assembly and the Senate have got a responsibility to look at the national government, to look at the president, and if he's making mistakes, they point it out, because we no longer have the defined role of the opposition.
Okay. Kalonzo versus vis-a-vis Wetangula for Speaker of the National Assembly. It is a very interesting matchup. Remember, Wetangula has already been elected senator for Bungoma, and if at all is elected Speaker of the National Assembly, they do have the numbers. They could actually make that happen. But the proposition to have Kalonzo Musyoka, that changes the game as well, because Kalonzo Musyoka is a politician who could actually strike a deal across board. He has a capacity, don't you think?
You see, first let me respond to Dismas, because he has mentioned things that should not go unchallenged. You know, Dismas and Kenya Kwanza speak the same language. They don't like history, and where they mention history, they revise to suit themselves. That is exactly what he says about NASA. That is exactly what he says about Kalonzo and any other person. But that narrative is consistent. It is a Kenya Kwanza, it is a hustler narrative, and we know. Now, whether you like it or not, there are some of us who believe that the election was null and void. So the issue of president-elect is neither here nor there. And we should not even go into that. Those who think there is, those who think there are not, we have the right to hold our position. Then, number two, if Kalonzo was given a position as a chief minister, I think that position was designated to Wiper, as a political party. And as a political party, they have the right to decide who gets that position. It doesn't mean, at no point am I reading anything to suggest that, the petition is going to be weak because Kalonzo has been fronted for the position of Speaker of the National Assembly. Then number two, Kenya Kwanza have numbers. On paper, they have numbers. You can see they have numbers. But you see, those numbers are not enough to give anyone the Speaker's position in round one, So to say that they already have it in the bag is to miss the point. But then to expect Azimio to play in such a way that makes it easy for them is also to miss the point. Now, fronting someone of Kalonzo's stature basically changes the balance, because I can tell you, it is not like the Speaker's position is going to be determined by which party, has numbers. That is just one of the key factors that will be at play. The other thing would be, what interest are you giving to different regions? And I think that's where Kalonzo comes in. And as you rightly say, he can cut deals across board. He appeals to the northeastern guys, the guys who've since moved from Azimio to Kenya Kwanza. He appeals to a few guys from the Mount Kenya region, and they're predominantly, in Kenya Kwanza. So this is a game of mathematics. You want to win the position. And in the pecking order, if you look at the position of a cabinet secretary and the Speaker of the National Assembly, it is only prudent that a serious political party would go for the most powerful position. Mm-hmm. So if Wiper decides that because the Speaker of the National Assembly is the third in command, and would rather front for this because we'll get this and we can still get the chief minister position, why would he fault them? Okay. It is interesting when what the deputy president says is a masterstroke, and then what Kalonzo says because he's in Azimio becomes something that Disma says is a gamble. I don't understand that.
I said it's a brilliant move as well.
We need to give just an opportunity before we go on a break. Wakili, what do you say about this battle for speaker?
I want to agree that it will be a tough contest between the lawyers Moses Wetangula and Kalonzo Musyoka. And as my friends have said, Kalonzo is a man capable of cutting deals across. And perhaps you may see in the coming days, even Kenya Kwanza reaching out to Kalonzo to be part of his majority or his tyranny of numbers in the assembly. Is not game over as such. But what I know is that the speaker that the president-elect Wlliam Ruto will decide on will eventually become the speaker of the National Assembly, whether in the first round or in the third round. But it's going to be a battle of the minds, battle of numbers, and battle of the wits. But Ruto's candidate will emerge the victor. Okay.
On that note, we take another break. When we come back, we'll take a look at what's happening in Kakamega and Mombasa. Remember, the election of a governor in those two counties was postponed. Initially, it had been slated for this coming Tuesday. Then later on, the IEBC chairperson of Wlliam postponed the two elections indefinitely. What does this portend for the rest of this country? That after the break.